Hello guys,
Hi everyone,
I'm Waldemar.
and I'm Veronika.
Today we are coming back to the series that we haven't watched for a couple of weeks, Oversimplified. This time it's the series called Mini Wars. It's like a series on his channel, but you probably know that when he makes videos about smaller conflicts.
I think we already watched the Emo Wars from that, right?
Yeah. I think Mini Wars, was from the same series. But now it's the first episode of this series. It's called the Falklands. So it's about the Falkland War between the England and the Argentina. Like we said many times, but I will repeat it. I watched all the oversimplified videos. Weronika hasn't. So it's more like an educational video for her mostly.
Yes, the first time watching for
I'm
me.
just an addition
To
with some
provide more
funny
facts.
comments on fun facts.
Yeah, I have to admit, I don't know from the top of my head what this is going to be about, as opposed to the others oversimplified videos when I had about other than the Emo War.
Like the World War One, like you were like something.
Yeah, it rings a bell,
It rings
right?
a
Like
bell.
I think I know what it's about. But with this, I mean, maybe when we start watching, I will remember.
Mm-hmm.
But
Nothing.
nothing. No.
Not the years, century.
No.
No. Okay.
Is that very ignorant? Did we learn this at school? Because I
you
cannot.
will learn at comments. You will see.
No, but
Oh.
did we learn it at school as part of the
I
program?
don't think so.
Okay.
Because it's the 20th century. It's the
Right. That's always skip
I don't know,
over.
70s or 80s. I'm not sure.
Okay,
I think maybe 80s, but I'm not 100% convinced. Either 70s or 80s, but it's not a big conflict. So maybe if you are living in the Great Britain or in Argentina, then maybe it's being mentioned more.
But
But
you knew
in
about this
Poland,
before the video?
Yes, but not that much.
All right, just curious.
Like I knew that it happened. Like with what can I compare it to? Like I knew that the Warsaw Pact countries like Poland invaded Czechoslovakia, but only because I lived in Poland.
Okay.
But it's not like a major conflict. It's interesting, but it's not like, oh, how can you not know that?
Okay. Well, let's find out then.
That's right.
Hi, English mariner John Strong. Hi, Anthony Carey, 5th Viscount of Falkland. I would very much like for you to go to Chile and locate the wreck of a Spanish treasure ship for me. Okay. Hey, I found some islands. The English were probably not the first to discover the Falklands, but they were the first to write it down. They found it to be cold, wet, and miserable, just like home. So they established a colony in 1765, unaware that the French had also discovered the islands and done the same a year earlier. And for a while the two were unaware of each other's existence until presumably there was an awkward moment where they ran into each other. Then the Spanish showed up and told the French that a couple hundred years earlier the Pope drew a line on a map and said all of this belongs to Portugal and all of this belongs to Spain, and that the island was in Spain's territory and they would like the French to hand over their settlement. Now since the two were good friends and Spain was willing to pay in cash money, the French obliged. But since they were still a little bitter about the recent 7 Years' War thing, they made sure to warn the Spanish not to let those dirty English on the other side of the island take over. So Spain went over to the
Hey, you have to take your priorities straight.
English and explained, Pope, line on map, Spain's island. And the English said, yeah, right, this is our island. But the Spanish had more guns, so they kicked them off anyway. But then England threatened to go to war. So Spain went to their friends in France and said,
By the way, it's an amazing thing when you think about the influence of the specifically Roman Catholic Church. Like nowadays, and since 2 or 3 centuries, it's not that much of an influence as it was in the Middle Ages. But even today, we are affected by all those that happened back then. And the Pope had the power, to draw a line on a map and say, okay, this belongs to this country and this belongs to this country. And because of that, nowadays in those countries they speak this language or that language. Like all the South America, Brazil is speaking Portuguese and the rest is speaking Spanish. And all of it because one older guy in Rome, I think it was in Rome then, but it could be Constantinople. So let's just say Pope. He was like, oh, okay, let's make this line here. And centuries later, we have people speaking those languages because of this guy.
It's not like he has any, I don't know, education or military knowledge.
I don't care how much education he could have, even if he will be the most educated guy in the world. I mean, to have that much power, like there is no president today, no dictator who could do that.
Well, there wasn't even a king like that, because if you went over another country, then you'd have to make war.
But
assign it to a different country.
Exactly, but Pope was like, oh, but I'm the Pope, and all Europe was like, oh, okay, fair enough. He's the Pope. Sure. Crazy.
Hey, it looks like stuff is about to go down. You in on this? And the French Minister of War said, yeah, and we'll launch a full-scale invasion of England and party like it's 1066. But then King Louis XV said, 1, you're insane, and 2, you're fired. Sorry, Spain, we're not ready for a war right now. So Spain had to give the English their settlement back, saying it's still our island, and the English said, no, it's our island. Then some colonists in North America got a bit rowdy, so the English had to leave their settlement to go focus on that, but they left behind a plaque that said this is totally still our island. So the island was in Spanish hands, but then a French guy, no, not that one, turned on the Spanish, took over most of the country, and captured King Ferdinand VII. And in response, the Spanish colonies in South America started vying for independence. So Spain had a little bit on its hands and also had to leave the islands. And for a couple decades, the islands were left uninhabited except for the penguins, some fishermen, and the gauchos, which are basically like cowboys but cooler and Spanisher. A merchant from Hamburg living in...
It's time to show you a penguin.
Oh yeah, I've got a penguin on my sweater. But I don't think it's the kind that lived in the fountains.
Yeah, I don't think so.
I don't think so, but still.
But the emperor penguins, they live on the Antarctic, like
yes,
right?
I think so.
But they don't travel that much.
No, I don't think they travel a lot, but I don't think
I thought you know everything about penguins.
I don't know everything about penguins. I know a lot, but not everything. But I know this is really cute.
And the gauchos, which are basically like cowboys but cooler and Spanisher. A merchant from Hamburg living in the now independent United Provinces of the Rio de la Plata heard about the feral cattle roaming the Falklands and thought it would be a good way to make some money. So he got permission from both Buenos Aires and the British government to set up trade there as a private venture. Some American ships came down and began hunting whales and seals around the islands, and Verney wasn't too happy about it. So he asked Buenos Aires for some military assistance in defending the islands, but Buenos Aires said, meh, do it yourself, gave him some weapons, and appointed him governor of the islands. So he seized the US ships and arrested their crews. In response, 2 things happened. First, America came down and said, nice settlement you have there. Would be a shame if someone destroyed it. And then they destroyed it. Second, Britain heard Verney had been appointed governor, meaning the United Provinces, actually now the Argentine Confederation, were officially claiming the islands as theirs. So Britain showed up and said, hey, didn't you see our plaque? And since they had more guns, they kicked them off the island. And the Falklands remained firmly in British hands for the next century. They officially became a crown colony in 1840. Port Stanley became the island's capital in 1845. The cattle hides from the island weren't worth much, so they imported sheep from Britain in 1851. 2 world wars came and went, and all this time the Argentinians never rescinded their claim over the islands. Now it's 1976, and after a couple civil wars, a new brutal military dictatorship sponsored by the US fight against communism has taken control in Argentina. And by 1981, this guy was in power. The economy had been struggling for a long time, and Galtieri had been unable to improve the situation. Now, if you ever find yourself the brutal military leader of a struggling South American country and you start getting into hot water, here's a bit of advice that has been tried and tested throughout the centuries. Start a war to distract everyone from their misery. Galtieri knew how popular he would be if he could finally take back Argentina's last Malvinas from the occupying British. There had been proposals to cut British military spending, and the ice patrol vessel HMS Endurance had been withdrawn from the area. So the Argentinians assumed the British may not even bother doing anything about.
Also, some food for thought. I was thinking about this recently. Like this, what he is talking about right now, that you are a dictator of your country, or a president, or some powerful politician, and you're not doing that well in the polls, so you want to, want people to support you more, so you go to war. and it works somehow. And for me personally, I always found it amazing. Like, I think every one of us have some political opinions. Like, we believe in that thing, but we don't believe in that thing. We are more on the left side or the right side, but economically we are on here or here. You know what I mean. So, where are all these people that are influenced by stuff like this? You know what I mean?
No, sorry.
Like, you live in a country and you have your political ideas, your political ideology. And would it change that much to you if your country won a war for some island
That's what you meant.
on the other way of the world? You'd be like, now everything changed for me. And it's the same thing with the funding campaigns. I thought about it. I read.
What,
I think
sorry?
funding when someone funds some political leaders, parties, stuff like that. But I thought about this because I read yesterday or 2 days ago that Elon Musk founded Trump's campaign. He paid him like 80 million, something like that. Yeah, and this is also an amazing thing because, like, everyone thinks for themselves that, like, for example, me, I wouldn't change my political opinions, like, no matter what. No amount of propaganda would change my political opinions. And yet somehow we can observe this pattern that someone transfers money, and that money transfers to more political support.
Yeah, or someone
A couple of weeks later. So how does it work? And where are all those people, those voters, who are influenced by stuff like that, who are influenced by the fact that country won some island on the other part of the world? Like, you are still starving, you still have no food in your house, your family
But you have some islands.
Yeah, but you have some island that you will never see in your life. Or some guy sent some money to the political party and they put the banners everywhere, and now suddenly they have 7% more voters. Like, where did this 7% come?
Yeah.
Where they
Who
were
was so
before?
easily swayed? Yeah, that's a good thing to think about.
Invasion. After easily capturing the largely uninhabited South Georgia island, 600 Argentine troops were sent to the Falklands. The small number of Royal Marines and other British forces stationed there put up a small amount of resistance, but in the end had to surrender to the larger Argentine force. Crowds in Argentina celebrated the news, but they were wrong to assume the British would do nothing, because the person in charge of the United Kingdom at the time was this lady. Thatcher was a somewhat controversial prime minister, but whether you loved her or hated her, there was no denying that she was tough. Like metal. Iron, for example. She immediately declared an exclusion zone around the islands and organized for a task force of over 100 ships to set sail for the Falklands. The United Nations expressed concern at the Argentine invasion. All South American nations apart from Chile backed Argentina, and since the United States had propped up the Argentine dictatorship, Reagan went to Thatcher and said, "Could you maybe just let them have the islands?" And Thatcher said no. Okay, here, have some weapons. Fighting a war over 8,000 miles from home was a logistical challenge for the British. They requisitioned civilian cruise ships and containers, and they used British-owned Ascension Island as a forward base. By the time they arrived at the Falklands in May, the Argentine forces had had time to entrench themselves. The first task for the British was to gain control of the seas, which they did easily. On the 2nd of May, a British submarine sank an Argentine cruiser. The sinking was controversial, as it occurred outside the British exclusion zone. It was also the largest loss of life in a single incident during the war. And in response, the Argentine Navy withdrew from the islands. The next task for the British was to gain air superiority. While the Argentine Air Force controlled the skies, they were able to inflict considerable damage on the Royal Navy below. Days after the sinking of the General Belgrano, 2 Argentine Super Etendars carried out a raid on the HMS Sheffield and sank it with an Exocet missile. For weeks, the Argentine Air Force would continue to carry out raids and inflict heavy casualties on the Royal Navy, with British Sea Harriers doing their best to take out as many of the Argentine aircraft as they could. While the battle in the skies raged on, San Carlos was chosen as the best landing site for the British ground forces. An SAS raid took out Argentine defenses on Pebble Island, and the HMS Alacrity sailed through Falklands Sound to flush out any Argentine supply ships. The landings began on May 21st, with Argentine aircraft carrying out full-scale raids on the task force ships taking part in the landing, damaging several and sinking a few, but anti-aircraft cannons and sea harriers shot down many of the aircraft in what became a major turning point for air superiority, and a beachhead was successfully formed. Then the ground troops began their movements out of San...
One little thing that I'm missing from this, but it's my fault entirely. It's hard to imagine all of that when I don't know how big those islands were.
Oh yeah. Okay.
You know, like to compare it to something like I don't know, banana, like the size of 400 bananas, because you know it's like there are islands and there are islands. You know, there can be islands like in the
Like Madagascar or
like Madagascar, like I don't know, like Greenland. Then can be islands like I don't know, like St. Helena. So it's difficult, you know, to picture all of that happening, you know, with the blockade, with the airports and all of that, when you don't, you can imagine how big the island was. Islands.
Carlos, across the north towards Stanley and south toward the Argentine stronghold at Goose Green. In the following battles, a clear trend emerged. The Argentine conscripts put up a good fight, and with the rough, muddy terrain, the war was by no means easy for the British. But with highly skilled Royal Marine commanders and parachute regiment troops, the British would often find themselves taking on larger numbers of Argentinian soldiers, but would still come out victorious with minimal casualties. The 14-hour-long battle for Goose Green commenced on the night of May 28th. The battle ended in a decisive British victory, with over 900 Argentinians surrendering. Then, with 5,000 reinforcements arriving from the 5th Infantry Brigade, the British started preparing for their final assault on Stanley. In a series of hard-fought battles, they took control of the hills and mountains surrounding the town, as the Argentine forces withdrew with British ships shelling their positions from offshore. Utterly surrounded, on the 14th of June, the Argentinians surrendered, and the war was over. The 2-month-long war claimed hundreds of lives and left the islands strewn with minefields that still pose a problem to this day. Argentina still claims the islands, but in 2013 a referendum was held and the islanders voted 99.8% in favor of remaining British. Plus, oil was just found near the islands, so the British probably aren't going to give them up anytime soon.
Okay, now I understand. Now I know. But I did not know about this.
No.
I mean, it rang some very, very, very quiet, very distant bell. That there was something going on between Argentina and Great Britain, but I didn't remember the details. But now I do know them, so that was great. He's really good at explaining in a short amount of time.
Yeah, I guess
was a
there was
short
more
thing
more
at the
to
end.
that probably.
Yeah, but enough so that I will now know what this was about.
If I remember correctly, and I base it on this movie with Meryl Streep when she played the Margaret Thatcher. So I remember something vaguely that it was a difficult decision politically to invade those islands because she didn't have like full support of all the parties. They weren't like, oh yeah, let's fight those islands on the other side of the world.
Yeah, it seems like, especially if they didn't know at that time there were resources there. It's nice to have land, but
Yeah.
it's a lot of money to be
I
spent.
think it was mostly the matter of principle, you know, because if we let some other country take part of our territory, then what's next?
What's next, yeah. Okay. Do we have anything else to add?
I don't know, do you?
No.
Nothing more to add.
Nothing more to add.
All right, so...
Then thanks for watching with us. And we will see you in the next video.
Yeah, maybe the next Oversimplified video, if this is the only thing that you are watching on our channel, then don't worry. There will be more Oversimplified videos coming soonish.
Yes, Sharish.
Someday.
And we've been also looking at that channel, the Epic History channel, that a lot of you guys recommended to us, but it would be really helpful if you could tell us which videos you'd like us to see. Because some of them are extremely long, so with our amount of pausing like this video is I see 19 minutes from an 8-minute video. So to a 40-minute video, I think you'd have to tune in for 2 hours of us talking. So if there are any maybe shorter videos that you'd like us to do, then please let us know.
That's right. Thank you guys.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.